Chapter 2 The Master in the Shaw Mansion. The huge Shaw Mansion loomed ahead as the gate opened and Sam drove the car onto the driveway. A magnificent water fountain stood in the middle as the driveway curved into a circle showcasing the wealth of the Shaw family. Sam parked the car next to the huge glass door entrance and quickly came to open the door for her, but Camellia, being used to helping herself, had already opened the car door. So Sam closed the door after her and retrieved her luggage from the trunk. A beautiful woman in a sleek black dress pant came out of the mansion. She glared at the modestly dressed woman at the bottom of the stairs and sneered.
"So you are Miss Quintana?"
Amy remarked presumptuously. Camellia nodded her head coolly.
"I can't imagine how you would have the guts to come into this house. Just to tell you, but everyone works in this house. Nobody gets a free hand of my father's wealth for nothing. Especially someone hated."
Camellia returned her hateful look with a cold, icy stare. "You must be a Shaw." Amy looked away arrogantly. "How funny of you to say that, when you look as if you've never worked in your life," Camellia remarked disgustedly, looking at how neat and straightened Amy's dressing was. "As they say, there are people who talk but never do the walk. You must be one of those people. How shameful for the Shaws." Amy glared at her as if she wanted to scratch her eyes out.
"My brother may have no choice but to bring you here, but you will never see a happy day here. We'll make sure of it."
With that threat, she immediately turned and walked down the stairs to get into an attractive red sports car and drove away. Calming herself, Camellia walked into the house following a nervous Sam. Sam had brought her luggage into the house and she thanked him kindly as he turned to leave. She stared in awe at the beautifully designed house. A cascading stairway led upstairs, and a huge family room loomed to her right, and a glittering dining room loomed to her left. Above hung a crystal chandelier, perfect for a princely entrance. A maid came up to her.
"Miss Quintana?"
Camellia nodded her head.
"I'll bring you to your room."
Camellia smiled in relief and followed the maid up the magnificent staircase to a huge hallway. They passed many doors before the maid opened a door for her to go into. Inside was plainly decorated compared to the rest of the house, but for her, it was good enough. She went in and found that the room had its own bathroom and shower, a modest-sized bed, and huge windows that overlooked the huge backyard and pool. She thanked the maid in kindness as the maid laid her luggage on the bed.
"Where's Mr. Shaw?" "Which one, ma'am?"
Camellia looked confused.
"Mr. William Shaw's son? Mr. James Shaw or Mr. Mark Shaw?"
"Mark," she whispered, not knowing that James had another brother.
"Mr. James Shaw."
The maid smiled.
"He usually is home around 6.
Camellia nodded in comprehension and the maid left her in her new room. Camellia turned to regard the place before her. How beautiful the place was if everything came with warmth and love. But she knew these huge homes only contained emptiness and cold, and the residents would be no different. Camellia came down the cascading staircase and looked for a maid. She was a bit hungry and wondered where the kitchen was. She was surprised that with such a big house like this, there was no one around. Even the maids weren't around. Curious, she went into every room and found no one, but beautifully decorated, empty rooms. She heard a dog bark and quickly followed that noise into a room. To her relief, it was the kitchen and 4 maids were there cooking. One of them, who must have been the head cook, ordered the rest around. On the ground, Camellia saw a medium-sized beagle dog wagging his tail and eating from a tray placed on the ground. He barked at her twice then came up and sniffed her. Her face brightened up, as she bent down to rub his neck. He seemed happy, and encouraged her to rub him. Camellia smiled and picked up the dog in her arms and stood up to look at the maids.
"Do you need any help here?"
Camellia asked kindly, hoping to make friends. 3 of them gave her a curious look, while the head cook looked at her unkindly.
"What are you doing here?"
"I came to see if there's anything I can help you with."
"Who do you think you are to come here?"
Camellia frowned, annoyed that the head cook was being unkind.
"I live here now. I can come here if I want to. Who are you to question me?"
"Oh. You must be the girl from America who's come to take over this house.
Camellia unhappily looked at her.
I'll have you know that I can replace you if you speak to me like that again.
Camellia spoke, knowing she was lying. She had maids once, she remembered, and none of them spoke to her like this. Is this how the Shaw maids behave, she wondered? Or were they just being unkind to a rival's daughter? She frowned. She would not allow them to bully her. To her satisfaction, the head cook looked to the other 3 maids around her, fearfully wondering if that could be true. They timidly stayed away.
You can't. Mr. Shaw likes me too much to allow you to do that.
This house also belongs to me. As you've heard, the late Mr. Shaw is now my guardian, so if you want to question my presence, you better be prepared to leave.
The head cook gave her an ugly stare.
You couldn't. I don't believe you. The Shaw, they don't even like you. They wouldn't give you that much power in this house.
Camellia flinched at having her feelings hurt from knowing the Shaw's feelings toward her. Though she knew, hearing it made it worse.
They despise me and I despise them. But I will throw you out of the house the next time you speak like that to me again.
Camellia looked around as if observing the kitchen, then she slowly replied,
I do see that the Shaw mansion needs a lot of changes.
She turned and glared at the head cook icily, and remarked,
and one of them may be you.
The head cook glared at her in mute disbelief. The other 3 maids whispered and giggled among themselves until the head cook gave them a threatening stare. Camellia patted the puppy's head and left the kitchen with a triumphant look, leaving the head cook to stare in mute horror.